Hi. New week. Monday. Let's get it started. Other 31 is in full bore right now as we start this week off with the San Jose Sharks. And we have a different team each day, all 5 days this week, and moving on to the next weekend. When we said 31, we meant it here on the DLS Stars podcast. So let's go.
Get ready, boys.
It is Monday. It is August 4th. This is the DLS Stars podcast as we welcome you to August. Well, again, because we had a Friday August show. Craig Ludwig, Sam Nessler,
hello.
Producer Elijah Smith. I'm Owen Newkirk. Hey, we got a big week for you. Luds will be in and out as he makes his way back towards Wisconsin, but he's here today and Wednesday. I believe we will have Sean tomorrow, but we'll see. Sean is very, we figure it out as we go. Big guests today as we start the other 31 Monday with San Jose Sharks Day. We will have Ted Ramey on in just a moment. Actually, there he is now. Hi, Ted. We're also going to have Sheng Peng from San Jose Hockey Now on our second half of the show. But right now, please, as we do this backwards, welcome in the radio host of the San Jose Sharks. He also does TV pre and post sometimes. Oh, I've seen him in front or behind the camera. And if that's not enough, he's also the play-by-play voice of the San Jose Earthquakes. Please welcome officially Ted Ramey. Hi, Ted.
Hey, guys. I'm very excited to come on with you, but can I ask you guys a question before we get into hockey talk? Is that okay?
Please.
Uh-oh.
Please make it about soccer because Luds love soccer.
It's not. It's about it might be about Luka. And
oh, no.
My qualm, and this is actually this isn't bad. I trust you. But by him reportedly getting ripped and in phenomenal shape, isn't that in a way proving that the Mavericks were maybe in a way right about what was going on? Now, maybe the end result is not the desired outcome, but by him getting ripped and in super good shape with another team, doesn't that acknowledge that there was a problem?
What do you think, Luds? Does the player need a kick in the ass to
I don't know. It sounds like Ted's stirring the pot here.
It doesn't it? Is this
which I love, Ted.
Is this revenge body or is this just maturing?
Does Luka not have a baby Huey kind of body?
Well, did you see the men's health photo from last week?
No, I don't.
Well, that's because it went around the internet. You probably aren't looking at that very much.
I'm not.
Sam's going to pull it up for you. He looked like he is getting into
I want to look
shredded.
at
you hadn't looked?
Oh, so he's getting in shape.
He's getting in shape. And then he signed the 3-year Supermax.
Good for him. That's him right there again?
It looks a lot.
Well, he looks like a different guy.
A lot skinnier than he did before, yeah.
So he doesn't have that baby Huey look, does he?
Right. No. Yeah,
That's what he looked like.
Yeah, so.
All right.
Good for him.
So, yeah, I didn't even know. We're learning things today on San Jose Sharks Day.
It's hard to get these guys to think about something other than hockey, Ted. So, yeah, I don't want to say pat the Mavericks on the back because there are a lot of Mavs fans around here that are not happy with them. But there's definitely some Luds FU energy about Luka's offseason.
Don't say that word out loud.
Well, why do you bring me to the edge and then
just to see what happens? Because we all like to look at the car crash.
It's not our fault when you do it. They get mad.
Ted, I want to ask you, how's Hazy doing?
How's what?
How's Brian Hayward doing? How's Hazy doing?
Oh, fine. It's all what it is here in the Bay Area. It's any day that we can talk about anything. We're happy to get into it.
Uh-huh. All right, let's get into the Sharks stuff. So we will. I promise you, I will not just send you negative questions. But as we're getting ready for this show, I'm looking at the Sharks list of seasons, last 5, 6, 7 years.
Since 2019 is what you need to say.
Yeah. Well, the team made the Stanley Cup final in 2016. I still argue, and this is nothing against the Sharks. It was a very good team. I think if the Stars didn't crater in Game 7 at home against the Blues, I think Dallas would have beat San Jose and faced Pittsburgh in the final. Maybe not, but that's just my side take. Then 3 years later, you go to the Western Conference Final. You lose to the eventual champs in St. Louis. 100-point team. And then it went off the cliff. Haven't made the playoffs since and dropped 40 points just in that 1 year. And it's been a full-on rebuild ever since. And it's, we'll get into some of the details of it. But from a Sharks perspective, a guy who's been covering and working for this team for a long time, what the hell happened in the last 6 years?
So, I mean, there are a number of ways to look at it. Pretty much once they acquired Joe Thornton, and even before that, they were in a championship window. And a lot of people don't give Doug Wilson enough credit and acknowledge how long he was able to keep the team in contention. But they were the classic example of a team that focused on the here and now for roughly, an almost 20-year period, and sacrificed the future, which meant that they were trading draft picks, which meant that they were trading prospects, which meant that they were always, trying to do everything that they could do in the here and now. And eventually, like any team that is in a very good place for a long, long time, you want to talk about the Patriots, the NFL as being the most recent example. It all comes crashing down eventually, and it might come crashing down with the Warriors here. I mean, they've been making the playoffs, but I mean, when you're good for a long time, eventually you have to pay the piper. And when we look at what happened with the Sharks after 2019, they decided to move on from Joe Pavelski, which worked out very well for Dallas, because Doug Wilson was trying to think of, okay, what can we do to make this team, better in the long run? And they thought that Evander Kane was going to be their next consistent, big time goal scorer. They brought in Erik Karlsson. There's a misconception that they signed Karlsson with the money they were going to put to Pavelski. That's not true. They had already locked up Evander Kane with that money. They had been trying to figure out, the next part of that narrative, and then COVID hit. And then the salary cap was frozen. And then Doug Wilson had health problems, which eventually led to him resigning or stepping down from his general manager position, which led to a brief kind of, in-between moment there at the end where the Sharks weren't sure what they were going to do. Then they hired Mike Grier, and he just decided, look, we've got money locked up in Brent Burns. We've got money locked up in Erik Karlsson. We've got money locked up in Tomas Hertl. There's Timo Meier. So he makes big trades with all of those guys. Logan Couture has to deal with a career-ending injury, and which saw him not play pretty much for the last 2 years. Right before the end of this past regular season, he stepped down. So in the process, Mike Grier sheds salary. He gets the number 1 draft pick 2 years ago in Macklin Celebrini. A couple years before that, he gets the number 4 overall with Will Smith. A couple years prior to that, they had drafted William Eklund with a very, high-level pick. And the teardown, according to our current general manager, Mike Grier, was kind of said to be done this past deadline, and that they would start building. And it's been a rough ride. I am not going to say it's been fun to be the worst team in the league for the last 2 seasons, but this is my naturally long-winded way of saying that the good times came to an end. There was a little bit of an unknown, and then a full-blown, tear it down to the studs and start building it back up, which has a lot of people excited. But there is still the reality that it's probably not going to be this year that this team is back in the playoffs. Maybe they will. I always say I'm a sports broadcaster because I'm very good at being wrong. But this is still a team that is about the future more than the here and now, even if what we've seen, the second half of last year, the Sharks, not a lot of wins, but in terms of entertainment and excitement, it was a whole lot of fun.
So, Ted, you said a lot of stuff there, but it sounds like
I was going to say, thanks, Ted. It's been a great show. I've basically run through my sheet, so you two go ahead, carry on.
I think I can sum it up in it saying that the Sharks losing Joe Pavelski was the main reason for their downfall. That sound pretty much what you said?
That would be what, there's a lot of fans who will say that was the heart and soul and that never should have happened. And, I get it because, it's the old Bill Walsh mentality here in the Bay Area with the 49ers of better to get rid of a guy a year too early than a year too late. I don't think any of us really knew how long Joe Pavelski was going to be as good as he was. And, for us in the Bay Area, it made everyone a Dallas fan that was, a fan of Joe Pavelski. So that was really cool. It gave us something to watch in the postseason. But, That's how it goes. I mean, you have to think about the future. And I always say this because it's what is it, from a beautiful mind, the game is flawed. And I always look at Billy Beane with the Oakland Athletics and Doug Wilson with the San Jose Sharks as being two classic examples of guys who made the right moves, but that doesn't mean you always end up with the right end result when all is said and done. And it's sports. It is flawed. You can't always get the outcome that you feel you deserve. But yeah, I mean, Joe Pavelski, watching him go on to what he turned into with those last few years, it was not the easiest thing to stomach just from an emotional standpoint. I was very happy for him, and it's not like he was going to be the saving grace for the Sharks. But at the same time, it was like, wow, he is still really good. And when he called it quits, I think he had like 60 some odd points, which would have put him at the head point scorer of the Sharks 2 years ago. So it was like, yeah, he can still play.
Yeah. On a more serious note on that topic, because I was obviously going to ask you about Joe pretty much off the bat, is it almost harder to stomach because of what he's probably going to be for this organization eventually? I mean, it seems like the team and him are well aware that the door is wide open for him to come in some sort of hockey role. That probably would have been in San Jose if he had retired there and finished there.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you also have to look at the fact that, this team has only ever retired 2 jerseys, 2 numbers in San Jose with Marleau and Thornton. And, maybe Pabs would have been the 3rd, and maybe it wasn't quite viewed the same way because of those seasons that he wasn't with San Jose at the end. It's really an unknown. And if he does end up with Dallas in hockey ops, I wouldn't blame him, because that's a great place to live and be able to operate. But I'm sure there's more than a few people in San Jose that probably feel that they would try and poach him and get him out here, just in the same way that Joe Thornton is kind of, or now he is officially part of the staff up top, and he's the director of vibes, as the joke is out here. So I don't know. I think that everyone at the same time respects Joe Pavelski so much that if he wants to do whatever he wants to do, people are still going to love him, because everybody loves Pabs. I mean, he was Captain America out here, and obviously, just his entire narrative of being a guy that no one thought was going to be that great and turned out to be an all-timer. There aren't a lot of harsh critics of Joe Pavelski out here in San Jose.
Yes, just in case you're wondering, Ted, we have a Joe Pavelski bell because we talk about him. We talk about him every day, even though he hasn't been on this team. But
we started
more
almost a year ago.
Yeah.
Our first shows were in August of 2024. And, of course, we had nothing to talk about because there weren't any games. So we talked about the offseason. And so Joe Pavelski, retiring, became a running gag. And there was a long time where we went 0 days without mentioning Joe Pavelski. And until you came on, I think we'd gone a month or two.
It's been a bit.
Now we're getting a lot of Pavs. So if you hear the bell because we say Pavelski, don't be freaked out. It's just our.
No, I like it. I figured, I was like, there was some sort of talking point before the show. It's like, see how many times Teddy mentions Pabs. So I thought that's what it was. But I'm glad there's a grander narrative going on.
Yeah. No, this is not on you. We do have a super chat, though. Let's throw that in there real quick. And we got to make Elijah change buttons real quick. I love missing 1985 with a Ludwig and a Pavelski. I miss Joe Pavelski. Just had to do that. So thank you very much for that one. Up next, lots more with Ted. We're already at a break. Yeah, we're flying through here on the DLS Stars podcast.
Clearly the best segment I have done up till this period.
You haven't had a question yet.
Branded Bills. Whether you're in need of setbacks, snapbacks, truckers, fitteds, beanies, or tees. A lot of setbacks here on the show. Branded Bills has you covered with performance and style. Looking for some gear to make your brand stand apart from the crowd? Branded Bills has you covered with the best custom headwear around. Start your order, and their dedicated team will help you create the exact custom apparel you need. They have a partnership with 40 colleges as part of their campus collection, including TCU, Texas Tech, and, of course, Texas. Head over to brandedbills.com and use code BBDLLS for 15% off your first order.
What's that again, Luds? What's that code?
Well, there's BB, which for me is Big Brother, D, and then LLS
nice.
for 10% off. Are you trying 15. To get me to stretch this out a little bit?
You did it.
You want to get me right to the minute so right Sam can...
You'll be there in 1 second.
Go right
you did
now,
a great job. Let's talk about Shady Rays.
Oh.
You know that moment, the one that you realized you left your favorite sunglasses at the beach or on the roof of your car or maybe at a gas station 3 states away? We've all been there. Then we found Shady Rays, and that has changed the game because they have sunglasses that are made for real life. Seriously good looking, polarized, durable, and not stupidly expensive. And here's the wild part. If you lose them or break them, even on day one, Shady Rays will send you a brand new pair. No guilt trip, just replacements. So now you can actually wear your sunglasses like I do without fear. That means on hikes, concerts, on the boat, sitting in your car, right? All these sound like these fun, exciting excursions. You could also just wear them sitting around in the sun. Shady Rays is eyewear that has your back. We've teamed up with Shady Rays to bring you an exclusive offer. Head to shadyrays.com. Use the code DLLS35 for 35% off polarized sunglasses. All right, let's bring Ted back on the screen because he didn't have to sit through our ads. There he is. Ted, I'm going to let Luds ask a question because we haven't even gotten to Luds yet. Go for it.
Perfect.
Go for it.
Ted, well, you've mentioned Joe, and I'm not going to talk about the Pavs guy. Talk a bit about the Joe Thornton. You mentioned Thornton a couple times here. The importance of bringing him back and making him part of that organization.
I mean, the guy has such an unbelievable love for the game. Just seeing him out there recently at our development camp with all the young players. He's out there on the ice. He's always smiling. He is the king of vibes, as they like to say, and now the director of vibes here in San Jose. Macklin Celebrini lived with him this past year. Will Smith also lived with Patrick Marleau, so they were, in there in year number one with two guys who understand everything about San Jose. But Joe Thornton, I think that for people on the outside looking in, they see the beard and they see the stories, and they probably saw clips from his his speech this past year when the Sharks retired his number. And that's just who the man is, like nonstop. Like the guy has such an incredible vibe about him. He is always, it's the no bad days mentality with Joe Thornton, and he's always in a good mood. When we put together a special for him on the Sharks Audio Network before we did that, we talked to everybody, and everybody has a Joe Thornton story about him. My favorite one is I think they were in Pittsburgh, and this was from Brent Burns, who said, oh, well, we were walking down the street and somebody yells, hey, is that Jumbo Joe? And he says, yeah. And then instead of getting a taxi, it's the back of a garbage truck, or maybe it was Public Waterworks, something like that, back to the hotel as opposed to getting a taxi. And that's just the Joe Thornton vibe. Everybody loves the guy. He seemingly has friends everywhere. And just having somebody like that who is able to kind of make you not sweat the small things or anything like that, because hockey, it's such a detail-oriented game, but he makes everybody seemingly how aware they need to be of appreciating the moments and enjoying the game of hockey. And I don't know if there is someone that loves hockey more than Joe Thornton. I would, argue that's impossible to do, but the love that he exudes is palpable. And I think that having the young players around him in particular remind them of the fact that as frustrating as it gets, as devastating as some of those losses can be, this is hockey. It's a game. We're all supposed to be having a good time. And if you foster that love for the game, it will probably lead to a better outcome. And that's actually something that a lot of the ex-players I talk to about with youth hockey, they say their parents are burning them out, and they all say the number one thing is that you need to love the game. That goes for any sport, obviously. And that goes back to Joe. I don't think anyone loves the game more than him. Probably there are people who love it as much as him, but I don't think it's possible to love it more than he does.
Boy, we have so many things we can talk about. I do love the fact that they've kept that, although the Pavelski thing was a departure from that. So let's talk about those ones that left before we look at what's ahead. Timo Meier, Tomas Hertl, Logan Couture getting hurt, Pavelski leaving, ding, Burns. I mean, that was a demarcation, really was. And it felt like, if you looked at it, obviously you can't go back and change it now, but if you had Couture healthy, Timo Meier and Tomas Hertl on your team right now, your team looks a lot different than it does right now.
It does, but you don't have Macklin Celebrini,
right?
First and foremost, and you don't have quite the, the Sharks had a not great farm system, for lack of a better term, when it came to the end of the Doug Wilson era, because they had been trying to foster the here and now for so long. And it's one of the things that I'll always wonder about what Doug would have done if he had stayed on and not had the health problems. But what it turned into what Mike Grier has been able to capitalize upon and get so much draft capital, so many prospects, so many opportunities. And I know that we talk about getting these number one picks and getting your first round picks, second round. It's not about that any of those guys are guarantees. And I know that we can talk about the NFL and people finally figured out that it is a coin flip. You want as many coin flips as possible. You want as many guys that could end up being a impactful players, not necessarily a star player, but if you want to work, even though the cap is going up, you're not going to have money for everybody. You need to bring in those players who can turn into not even just a stopgap, but somebody who can play at a high level with the other stars that you have. And, I think most recently, the example of the team that's been able to turn the wheel the best until very, very recently was Boston. And you want to be able to keep on having those prospects and young players coming up. So yeah, the team would have been better, but it would not be able to have what they hope is continuity within the team, the culture, and the entire system going forward.
Boy, the chat is loving Ted right now. From the you've been accused of being a Chicago Bears fan. I think it's the mustache. Kayla said that you have a beautiful stash and you look like Tim Thomas.
You know who he looks like?
Nobody's saying anything about his perfectly round head.
It is perfect.
It's perfect.
He kind of looks like the guy with the big mustache from The Longest Yard, the Adam Sandler movie.
The guy with the big mustache?
Yeah, I think he's a prison guard or something in that movie. It's a good compliment. It's a big...
I've seen the movie. I'm just trying to figure...
I don't know. You're not talking about the Dorito guy?
I think he's a wrestler. I think he's a professional
about
wrestler.
Goldberg, or are you talking about
Stone
Cold?
I've gotten both
Stone Cold.
Yeah. I don't think Goldberg had a mustache,
Stone
right?
Cold.
So
that's
Steve Austin?
You got it all.
Yeah, there you go. So
I've
they're
also
having fun
got
with you.
James Hetfield if I had hair.
who just satisfy everybody in the chat, who is your NFL team?
Oh, the 49ers. I grew up in the Bay Area, so yeah.
There you go. See, you were accused of being a possible Raiders fan. I don't even know why. So,
well, because it's the East Bay. I grew up in the East Bay. They were here as well. I like Pete Carroll. So this year, I'm actually intrigued by what the Raiders are going to do.
KC?
You talking about Mahomes?
Player?
No.
Andy Reid.
Yeah,
I got a little Andy Reid
That's
vibe
less
too.
of a compliment.
He's got a little Andy. Look at see right there where he laughs and giggles.
Andy Reid is very rich and very successful, so I'll take it.
Yeah.
I'll take it.
Or all you broadcasters.
Let's talk about Stars connections for a minute. First about them, and then maybe about what you see at Dallas. Ty Dellandrea, obviously acquired a couple years ago. How's he been? And then you got John Klingberg, longtime Dallas Star, in free agency this year.
So with Ty, I think that last year he was one of those guys who was kind of moved a lot up and down the lineup. But I overall like his effort, and I think people are expecting him to be more impactful in year number 2. I know that he was a very high-rated pick, and maybe, and you and I have talked about it before, which there was a little bit of consternation when that actually happened. So, I still think there's a lot of skill, but I think the one thing that Mike Grier has really looked at with the guys that he's brought in is he wants the guys, A, with a high compete level, and B, he wants them to be just effort-filled and something to prove. And I think that he has something to prove overall. And again, just being a character guy, a good interview. I like that, he's got a little Del Taco reference in his nickname, and that came up. I thought it's like the last thing I expected. But just a good guy. I know that in hockey, they're all good guys. This is not something that we're really amazed at, but again, he is just a good guy. And I am expecting bigger things from him in year number 2 with Klingberg. Health is what you wonder about first and foremost, but also bringing that experience that he has. Not the youngest guy in the world anymore, but you need more experienced veterans because last year they had to trade so many guys away at the deadline. I mean, we would joke about it. We would be doing these shows, myself and Dan Ruzanowski, who is our only radio announcer that we've ever had. Randy Hahn, who is one of 2 TV play-by-play guys, because Joe Starkey was the original one way back in the day. And then even in that first year, Randy was doing some TV. So, I talk to these guys. We do shows at the deadline, talk about everything that goes down. We were having trouble coming up with all the guys that, whether there was Luke Cunnin, whether it was Jake Wallman, whether it was, Fabian Zetterlund. I mean, so many people got traded away last year that you were looking at this lineup at the end of the year and being like, man, the relative experience out there is not great for San Jose. But granted, you have to go through these tough times. So, with Klingberg, I think that there's a high upside. And I think that you need those guys who have been through those battles before, who have been through the wars and understand what culturally Mike Grier is trying to instill in San Jose.
All right, Ted, we have a couple, as we said, Stars connections here. Before we ask you about the Stars in general, Tom Holy.
Oh, yes.
Well,
PR extraordinaire here makes the relatively unknown move of
happened in Dallas twice
it's
now.
happening now a little more to the hockey ops assistant GM side over there. What have you seen from Holy in that new role and him as a person? You smiled as soon as I said it. So,
well, no, I just, he's a great character. And I always think that if I had to put up with people like myself, I might be looking to switch career paths as well. So, but yeah, I mean, he is one of those guys who's going to fit in, and he can kind of be not somebody that greases the groove, but understands how to facilitate relationships and how to ultimately be a part of that staff and kind of bringing in some of his expertise from how the outsider looking in is going to help with it. But I mean, the guy is just a tremendous human being. And it's so funny, you think back to his time, being with San Jose previously and then going to Dallas and now being back here again. I mean, the pull of the Bay Area is strong. It's a great place to live. But I think that, a lot of times guys get pulled in and you get so in the thick of it on the media relations and public relations side of things that you do become so into it. And, ask any broadcaster as well, that you do start wondering about, if there's a different side of things that you can kind of look at because you're so well versed in the team, in the game. And I think that probably started to tickle his fancy of like, hey, I know this stuff so well. I've been immersed in it in so long. Maybe my skill set can be put to use in another area. And I think that, when that opportunity came to Tom, he said, hey, this is a great opportunity for me. And he was able to jump at it. And I think that, he's been having a lot of fun so far in San Jose. And even though we have not had a lot of wins, I will say that our fun level is at a high level in San Jose because everybody acknowledges that things are pointed in the right direction.
that's important.
Got to have fun, even when you're losing.
I think Joe Thornton knows how to have fun.
Oh, yeah.
You done?
Yeah.
Okay. It seems this is like a buddy talk here about all these buddies around here. I'm a little interested in the general manager, Mike Grier. The job that he's done, his first kick at the can. I mean, the CC and the Granlund deal, he gets a first and a third there, but the Wallman thing that he pulls off there. So to me, from the outside looking in, I would think that Mike Grier's job that he's done is probably rated pretty high.
I would assume so, although a lot of people from the outside looking in who aren't like where I am, if you are a fan of sports in the Bay Area, of which you're competing with the Giants and the Warriors and the 49ers and the Earthquakes and even the A's to an extent, even though they're in Sacramento, and the Raiders, they're probably saying, boy, those Sharks not good yet. And it's almost like you got to prove it first. And I think that even though the Sharks were able to get some established veterans in free agency, they didn't get any stars. And this team, the onus is on Mike to prove that with not just the veterans, but the guys he's drafted, like we can see that Macklin Celebrini and Will Smith will be stars. William Eklund, another player that will be a star in the NHL. But now it's on those guys, to prove it, but to prove it with Mike Grier and his vision saying, okay, if right now 31 other teams in the NHL are all trying to get better, how do we prove that this can be someplace to go? Everyone that's here right now has got to take strides to move forward, even without the big acquisitions, because their biggest acquisition, Tyler Toffoli, he's a great player. Jeff Skinner, another guy who I think if he's healthy, he can have a great season going throughout and, be nearly a point per player or point per game player. If those guys work out and the young players take those steps forward, then Mike Grier will be viewed very, very positively. But, as you guys in Dallas know, there's a lot of competition and it's easy for people to say, okay, well, let me look over here at the team that is winning as opposed to the team that isn't. And so for Mike Grier, that's ultimately what he's going to be judged by. Now, for somebody in the thick of it like me, I think he's done a really good job. And I think he has done everything possible to give the Sharks that opportunity to take those strides. And yeah, I mean, you can criticize, maybe the Timo Meier trade is still kind of unknown because you're waiting to see Shakir Mukhamadulin's health because he dealt with an injury at the end of last year and what he turns into as a player. And Fabian Zetterlund was, their best goal scorer, arguably. And, maybe he, could have turned into more with San Jose. So that one could be viewed a little bit differently. But I mean, you got to wait and see what happens. So while I think Mike Greer, granted, I might be biased. My paychecks are signed by the same guys that Greer's are, but it seems like he's done from what I also feel is a pretty harsh perspective of my own, because I was a fan before I was a broadcaster, is that he had to make the really hard choices. He did so while he was, a lot of people didn't like it, but now this team is pointed in the direction to have success. It can't come soon enough from the outside looking in, but, those of us that are close to it, we like it. I think those on the outside say, hey, Will Smith and Macklin Celebrini look pretty impressive, but give me a reason to go out there and watch this team in person, or watch them, every other day during the week. And I think that's something that only comes with wins, is when you're in a metropolis area like the Bay Area or Dallas, people are waiting they need that show me moment to where they feel they're going to invest their time and money in a team.
All right, we are out of time, but I have to ask you before we go very quickly, what your take is on from your perspective, Ted, what do the Dallas Stars look like to you?
Another team that is going to contend once again. I think that if you look at the way the offseason has gone, it's still, I am a team or a guy that believes in carryover from one year to the next, but I need to see it in March, in February. I like what Dallas is, but again, it's the offseason. Right now, there's so much that can happen. Last year I said I wouldn't be surprised if Edmonton was back in the Stanley Cup final again. I didn't predict a rematch. But I still look at Dallas as a team that's going to be very, very difficult, and still going to be a team that believes when they get towards, the later stages of the season, that they've got an opportunity once again. The coaching stuff, the wheel keeps on turning in the NHL. That's one where I don't know. We could get into a longer thing about the goalie situation there, and boy, give me some time and we can talk about all the different angles there. But I still like the core of what Dallas is going forward. So if you want to get my takes on that other situation another time, I'm happy to come back and talk about it, because yeah.
Well, I've certainly have enjoyed being on your show quite a bit, so it's nice to kind of return the favor and do it the other way around. I'm sure we'll do it again. And you have definitely encouraged some of the more hilarious fan engagement on our chat. So kudos to you, Ted, as always. Thanks for joining us today. And hope your rest of your offseason is great.
Thanks, Steve.
Anytime, guys.
There he goes. Ted Ramey, host of the Sharks radio broadcast and also an analyst for pre and post on their TV call. And the Quakes play-by-play guy. Busy guy. All right, up next, Sheng Peng from the San Jose Hockey Now writing side. We'll get the outside the team perspective of the Sharks here on DLS.
Yeah, a little wobbly there. But first, we get to hear about this trip that we know all about that we are not invited on. That is the DLS Cowboys trip to Las Vegas with True Fan Travel. We, DLS Cowboys, are heading to Las Vegas with True Fan Travel for the ultimate fan experience. DLS is taking over the Strip for an unforgettable weekend in Vegas, and you need to be there. Join us as the Cowboys take on the Raiders November 17th on Monday Night Football. Sorry, Ardell, the Raiders. This all-inclusive trip includes a 3-night stay at a luxury Vegas resort, game tickets, VIP parties, exclusive events with the DLS crew, and fellow diehard fans, and much, much more. In case you guys are wondering, I was looking up some facts on that game. Currently, the Cowboys are at a -7. The favorites. That's how betting works, right? -7.
Look at our expert over here.
They are favorites to beat the Raiders in Monday Night Football in November. In case you're wondering,
I would call that a very early line.
Yes.
Who's going to be their line? What are they got all their team there? They got their linebacker.
I believe Parsons will not be there.
Oh,
he will
is
be
he- is
on
there
Well,
gonna be a
a
big
different
role in the
team.
you don't know yet.
Well, it doesn't seem that way. In case you're wondering as well, countdown to kickoff: 105 days, 5 hours, 40 minutes, and 3, 2, 1, 0 seconds until that kickoff. So this is how Dallas does Vegas. Book now, truefantravel.com. We also have plenty of other stuff to talk about, including our new Dallas collection merch drop with Luds. Elijah, can you cut back to our... Look at this guy right here. Show me that shirt.
That's a good-looking shirt.
That's a great shirt.
One of
Look
our
at
better
that.
shirts right here. What does it say? Dallas versus y'all?
All y'all.
All y'all.
It might be the model.
That's a great shirt. I mean,
the
Luds
only
makes
guy
it
here
look
that
better, but
fills
there's
out his
plenty of
shirts.
options. We got some barbecue options, the creepy mascot put all together into one.
That one.
No, I thought you were wearing it. I wasn't sure.
No. This is one of the old Luca shirts.
Yeah, that's rough.
I
He's wearing
saw
the
the
Luca shirt.
sombrero up there too, and I thought
We got plenty of stuff. We have the Otter shirt.
77 right
We have
here.
the Finnish
Sorry,
Mafia,
guys,
one of our
Luca
better
shirt.
selling shirts of all time. Wyatt 16-bit, Miko finisher. See how fast Elijah can keep up with all the things that I'm saying.
So fast.
All available at alldls.com. Be a diehard. Do all the good things.
He did it.
You
He
ran
got through
over. I didn't need to go so long. I didn't know you were going to run.
it. All right.
rumble.
Second
Told
half
me to
of
ramble
our
for 2 minutes,
San Jose
so.
Sharks Day is going to be with the guy who is the beat for the Sharks on San Jose Hockey. Now we welcome in Sheng Peng. Sheng, thanks for joining us today. Very appreciative of you taking the time to talk. We had a team perspective with Ted, but we acknowledge that sometimes, including myself or Luds, who worked for the team before, that may be a little biased. So we're thrilled to have the unaffiliated take on the Sharks. So let's start with where you're at with this team after the offseason they just had, right? We talked about it with Ted of bringing on John Klingberg, and I don't know, did we spend much time mentioning Dmitry Orlov yet?
Didn't even bring up his name.
So there's been a huge turnover in the last 5-6 years of the roster. Where do you think the Sharks are at in their rebuild right now?
Hey, how's it going, guys? Right now with their rebuild, I mean, I think it's a lot of question marks, right? They've brought in a lot of prominent defensemen, but guys that might be a little past their prime when we're talking about Orlov and Letty and Klingberg. Maybe not so past their prime that they can't help, but this isn't 5 years ago. 5 years ago, you bring those guys in like you're talking playoffs, I think, because those guys were really good back then. But now there are question marks with them. Up front, I think they wanted to bring in maybe I know that they were in on Ehlers. They were interested in Besser. I don't know if it was ever a serious thing. I don't know if those guys ever really seriously considered San Jose, because it's hard to sell a last place team to a player that they want to be in a competitive situation at least. And so they missed out on that. And so I think they kind of settled on a Jeff Skinner who can still score goals, but is a bit of a limited player. I think they probably wanted somebody a little more well-rounded, obviously a little younger too. So I think it's a lot of question marks. A lot of it depends on the most important thing anyway, regardless of who they signed or added this offseason, is the continued improvement of Macklin Celebrini and Will Smith and William Eklund and Yaroslav Askarov and down the line. So if that happens, then the rebuild's going to be just fine. It's going to move ahead in the right direction. If that doesn't happen for some reason, if the veterans aren't good enough to help out some of these youngsters, then there could be trouble.
Well, when you mention youngsters, so their number 2 overall pick, does Michael Misa? Is it Misa or Misha?
Misa.
Can he crack this lineup? Do you think they'll give him a chance? And the one thing I worry about these young kids coming in, I go back to Connor Bedard a little bit.
Yep.
You know, when the team isn't great and then they got to come up in an environment where you're not winning a lot.
You're the only guy.
And you're worried about the mental side of it. So where does he fit in?
Yeah, Michael Misa can make this team, which I think is a statement to this team, actually, to be honest, because Michael Misa is an excellent prospect, but I don't think anyone has him confused for Macklin Celebrini or Connor Bedard or Austin Matthews, somebody that you expect to just step in and maybe pop in 20, 30 goals or something like that, right? And so, but Misa is probably good enough from what talking with people to play with the Sharks and help out too, be a good player. Michael is a pretty solid two-way player for an 18-year-old. I think he needs to still work on his body physicality, which is a very typical thing for an 18-year-old player, but he should be smart enough to be a useful player for a weak Sharks team. So I think that he can make the team. I think that the idea is for him to give him the best possible chance to make the team. So I expect that he will be on the team this year.
Sheng, I'm a big college hockey fan. Your team out there is a pretty good team to watch if you are a college hockey fan. Obviously, Celebrini, and then Will Smith was massive part of that very, very good Boston College team. I'm just curious your thoughts. What is his ceiling? What does he look like this year? And then what do you see him as in the future?
I see Will, if he hits his ceiling, being a point per game player, being kind of that offensive driver, right? That's why drafting Celebrini was so important to the Sharks, because before they drafted Celebrini, the Sharks didn't really have a sort of a what you would designate as a franchise kingpin number one player. Will Smith is an excellent prospect, but I don't know if he projects to be the best player on a Stanley Cup winning team. Macklin Celebrini, not to put all this pressure on an 18-year-old or 19-year-old, but Macklin does project as that, as somebody like Jonathan Toews, a two-way player, but maybe even more offense than Jonathan Toews, which is, I mean, that is a really, really good player. Will Smith is going to be a little more offensive leaning, which is a perfect kind of complement to Macklin's kind of all-around game. And so anyway, if Will Smith hits what they hope that he can do, it will be a point per game type player, power play kind of monster, that kind of thing, right? But of course, the big question in San Jose, at least, is whether or not he is a center or a wing in the long run, and that's not sure about that.
Let's talk about the goaltending for a second, because Mackenzie Blackwood obviously made a move to Colorado last year, and they made an interesting acquisition. Our other showmate, Sean, who's not here today, is a huge fan of Yaroslav Askarov. He's very entertaining. He's very outgoing, especially on the ice. If you guys have never seen him do the post-shootout celebration where he brought the net down and did bench presses, it's pretty hilarious. What's your take, Sheng, about where Askarov is in his budding NHL career, and does San Jose think he can be the guy?
Oh, absolutely. They think that he can be the guy. They traded basically 2 first-round picks for him. They traded their 2025, the Vegas Golden Knights first-round pick that they got for Tomas Hertl. And then they traded a David Edstrom, who the Golden Knights had drafted the year before at the end of the first round. So basically 2 first-round picks. Very good prospect in Edstrom for Askarov. And they've paved the way for Askarov to take over this year. They obviously traded Mackenzie Blackwood earlier in the season. And right now, their goaltending tandem is Askarov and Alex Nedeljkovic, sorry. And so they think he can be the guy. And clearly he has, if you watch him, it's pretty, I'm not a goalie guy, but you watch a guy that is just like faster side to side, bigger, like he makes really, really hard saves look really easy sometimes. So Askarov is clearly off the bus, on the ice, looks like he can be a elite goalie. But of course, though, he's got to do it over 50, 60 games, right, in the NHL. And that's a huge challenge. We don't know if he can take that step. There's a emotional, a mental kind of maturity, concentration. That's the difference between being a elite NHL guy or being just a good NHL guy. And so we're going to see where Askarov is in all that.
We haven't mentioned the head coach through all this
We
stuff.
haven't, yeah.
And I'm thinking, with some of the older players that are coming in, the young team, the record, the not so great win-loss, how is Ryan Rosofsky handling himself through this whole process so far?
I think it was a learning year for Ryan Rosofsky last year, which is very, very normal for a first-year NHL head coach. Also, maybe it doesn't matter so much, but the youngest head coach in the NHL too. And so it was a little bit of a learning year, but it seemed like he did get better as time went on. Just a small example of that, when they traded Mackenzie Blackwood, the Sharks were actually like competitive. They were like a 400 points percentage team, which sounds, that doesn't sound like much, but for the Sharks, that is really, really, was really, really good hockey for the Sharks. But then they went through this 2-month stint after that where they won basically 4 games. And it's a lot of it was because they didn't have Blackwood to kind of erase mistakes anymore, Blackwood was able to do that, to erase a lot of their mistakes. And Georgiev wasn't able to do that. I don't put that on Georgiev. It wasn't a good team. And Blackwood was maybe a better goalie last year at least. So anyway, though, around Four Nations break, Warsawski kind of changed up the neutral zone, made it a little more neutral zone forecheck, made it a bit more conservative. And so the Sharks were able to kind of finish the season on, for them, a high note and be competitive because Warsawski saw that what he was doing was not working. And there's an argument that maybe he could have adjusted sooner, but he did make the adjustment. He didn't just stick with his guns throughout the season. And it would have been really ugly at the end there if he had done that, I think, after Four Nations and after all the trades the Sharks made, including trading Granlund and CC to Dallas. So I commend them for adjusting and getting the Sharks to the finish line in a competitive place. So I think it is like a lot of the young Sharks. Can he get better? There is some wait and see, but there's also promise there too. And obviously, we also saw him win a World Championships. And so obviously there's a coach in there. He's had a lot of success in other places, has won a Calder Cup too. He is somebody that has done good work elsewhere, but this is one of the hardest jobs in hockey, head coaching jobs in hockey right now.
All right, a lot more with Sheng next. We continue to talk about the Sharks here on the DLS Stars podcast. But first, let's talk about being a diehard. And yes, the training camp Dallas Cowboys NFL special is still going on. How do I know? Because I just went to the website and it says that's alldls.com/intro, $36. It's more than 50% off the normal annual rate to be a diehard. What a great deal to get all the access, top level of support of DLS, and you do so at a fraction of the normal price. We're talking about getting access to all the written articles that are on the alldls.com website, including stuff written by Sam, Sean for hockey purposes, Tim for the Mavs, Clarence for the Cowboys, Jeff for the Rangers. We have it all through Dallas Sports, and that's the best way to do it. Plus, in addition to that, you can get a free t-shirt. I'm wearing one of the ones that was actually on sale that I got because, of course, we know that Luka is not part of the Mavericks anymore, but there are a lot of great looking shirts, whether it's the one Sam has over here, the regular DLLS flag shirt, the Dallas collection now. Luds is wearing the Dallas versus all y'all shirt, and I must say, modeling it spectacularly as well. And there, of course, the other new ones that dropped, whether it's the Dallas collection, whether it's the the Big Tech shirt, the Robin Ventura, Nolan Ryan shirt. That's the one I picked. I think that was great. The creepy mascot one. I'm sure it's not for everybody, but it can be for some. All those available. You can get one for free. Plus, being a diehard, you get a discount, 20% off all DLLS merchandise. So go to our website and you can pick out multiple shirts, hoodies, you name it. I think there's some interesting collegiate coffee mugs as well as the Sam's Don't Kidnap Me flag.
Yeah, that's nice.
So all those things are available. You can get a discount if you're a diehard. So take advantage of the discount on the diehard rate if you've never been a diehard before and get all of those things. And you also get access to the diehard only Discord lounge. And that channel is quite something. It's like the chat, but all the time. All right, let's bring Sheng back in. And Sheng, I'm curious, as you joke about playing 400 hockey, which that tickled me more than it probably should have. What is your expectation then? Because I asked you at the start sort of where they're at in their rebuild. What, you bring in, you mentioned Orlov and Klingberg and Skinner and Nick Leddy and Ryan Reeves. We haven't brought him up yet, which is an interesting acquisition as well. Where do you expect this Sharks team to be at the start of the year? Are they expected to be at the bottom of the Pacific and looking at being another team that trades away all their rentals at the deadline?
Well, Miker said last deadline that he hoped that would be the last deadline that he'd be trading people. But let's be honest, though. Chances are this deadline he may still be in the same position. But I will say that this team has a higher ceiling than previous teams because obviously I mentioned the veterans they brought in maybe being a little past their prime, but they're still good veterans, though. Especially a guy like Orlov was still playing big minutes for Carolina. Leddy, just 2 years ago, was still he was a little banged up last year. Leddy, still a very capable defenseman. Klingberg in the playoffs for Edmonton, granted, he's a very kind of risky player because of his injury history. But last year with Edmonton, he was playing good minutes for obviously Oilers team that made it to the finals. So if you have those kind of a much better defense, and you have the ceiling of a guy like Celebrini taking another step, Will Smith taking another step, Askarov kind of solidifying himself as a bona fide NHL starter, which he has a clear talent to do so. Those are very, very possible things. These are not like reaches. You're not trying to bank on like some like random like 6th round prospect that put up big points in NCAA but has no NHL game to like be a player for you. These are legit talents, and so the ceiling is higher for the Sharks team. So I do want to mention that, make that clear that this is a Sharks team that if everything hits, like I don't know, maybe they hit 80 points. But like realistically though, I think though that as long as the young players take a step, and maybe a couple of the veterans have good seasons, you're probably not all the veterans are going to be hits or whatever, to be honest. And as long as I think generally you stay out of last place, which the Sharks have been the worst team in the league the last 2 years, then I would call that progress. But again, the most important thing in all this is just as long as the young players take a step. If the young players take a step back and it's the veterans carrying you to like a 66-point season, that's not good. That's not what you want.
That's not good.
Right? It's not. Yeah. So most importantly, it's Celebrini takes another step and etc. And that's the key.
Is there a sort of negative or defeatist view that says they could be that bad again, and look at Gavin McKenna and then look at the duo that they have, or the trio if you want to add Will Smith in there, or Eklund? Or is that not something that would be beneficial for the organization, do you think?
Those things are hard to say. I think that if you kind of luck into McKenna, let's say you're the Sharks, you finish the 28th in the league, and then you win the lottery, great.
Yeah.
That's exactly what you want. That's what you're hoping for, frankly. But if you are just miserably bad and you're not adding it smartly to your team, then that's not great. And I do think long run that does matter, especially for a guy like a Celebrini who you think is going to be your franchise for a decade or longer, right? And if you don't build a good team around him, he's gonna leave. People think like, oh man, like 27 free agency, you got like 9-10 years to build a winning team around this guy. But we've seen case, obviously the most obvious recent one is I think like a John Tavares, right? And with the Islanders, and they had 10 years to build something around him. They didn't build anything convincing around him. And he's like, well, I don't need to stay here to stay in mediocrity. And of course, he went to kind of more playoff mediocrity with the Maple Leafs, but he didn't know that at the time. Though. He was going home, and the Maple Leafs were an up and coming team when he joined them. So anyway, though, with the Celebrini, I don't think that you can. I understand what Mike Grier is doing. He's trying to build responsibly, which makes sense. He's not over investing in long contracts for guys that maybe aren't worth it for the most part. Like he's been pretty careful about that throughout his off seasons, and I think that is smart. There's no sense in giving, I don't know, not that a Provorov would come here, for example, but is he going to be a difference maker? Provorov, 7 years at that kind of ticket for the Sharks, a last place team. Is he a difference maker for the Sharks? Probably not. And so I understand that kind of sort of Mike Grier being conservative in those kind of ways, but you also need to be improving too, though. You need to be slowly and kind of surely improving. And so that matters. And so you have good veterans that can help the young guys take that step. That's, again, kind of the idea of that. And so if he has done that with his team, and I do overall like the defensive additions that he's made. And that's a big part of it, because the Sharks have had, frankly, the worst defense in the league the last couple of years. And so he did take good steps this offseason to kind of remedy that and get that blue line out of sort of just that kind of that worst in the league kind of status, I think. And so again, I think it's just about taking steps, though. Yeah, taking steps, clear steps forward, especially the young players.
Okay, so a lot there.
Yeah.
We talk about being the worst in the league. The coach, all things considered, is doing pretty well. We've got some young superstars that are ready to look to make another step. You've got defensemen should shore things up. Last year, this team was 32nd in offense and 31st in defense. Which category makes the biggest improvement?
Clearly, they've tried to improve their defense. That was a clear concentration. One through 6, this defense, you can talk yourself into it a little bit. Ferraro is still a good kind of minute munching. He shouldn't be your top pairing, maybe not even your middle pairing, but in this construction of the Sharks, he actually might be their third pairing, which might be ideal for him. Mukuma Doolin is a very promising young defenseman. So you had those 3 other guys that the 3 free agents. And so you can start to talk yourself into the Sharks defense 1 through 6. And so I think if the defense improves, maybe the offense improves a little bit too. I mean, they both obviously, as you know, Craig, they feed into each other. And so I think if you can get a little bit out of both of them, just incremental improvements, and so both those totals will rise just a little bit.
All right, Sheng, I'm going to flash you back here to February 8th, 2025. The Dallas Stars are up at the Tank SAP Center, I believe it's called now. Is that right?
Yeah.
We are at the 2:46 mark, and Zetterlund makes it 2-0 Sharks. By the end of the first period, it's 3-2 Stars. The Stars go on to win 8-3.
Right.
My question is 2 parts here, and try not to. This is not piling on. I promise. I'm actually curious.
Sure, it isn't.
I'm curious.
That setup is not.
It's
I'm
okay.
really curious, though. I'm really curious. So, what do you remember about that game? And is that just kind of the day-to-day working the beat in San Jose right now?
Yeah, I watched a lot of bad hockey, especially the last 2 years. So that really is not much of a like, oh, that happened again that day. Okay, whatever. But though specifically though, I would say that especially the last 2 years with the Sharks, that anytime a good team wanted to kind of take over a game, a good team like the Dallas Stars, they did. And so that specific game when you described the Sharks jumping out to the lead, that was very much, well, this good team is sort of they stayed out a little too late the night before or something, or they just honestly, that's like, so you expect a really good team to just kind of, when they want to turn it on, when you want to turn it on against the Sharks the last 2 years, you could, if you were any good of a team. And so that's what obviously Mike Grier is trying to sort of combat. And so we talked a lot about what is growth for the Sharks, and that would be growth, that teams can't just sort of have their way, that Sharks make it just a little bit harder for them to take over once this hypothetical better team kind of let their foot off of the gas pedal of the first period and let the Sharks jump on them. And so if the Sharks can kind of push back against that, then we see that more throughout the season, then that would be growth too. And so that's a general summary of the last 2 years, though, that again, like you mentioned in your example, when the Dallas Stars wanted to turn it on, they just turned it on. That's what it felt like.
He could have answered that just when Sam was giving all those stats out and Sheng had to start talking. He was kind of spitting up and choking a little bit, right? I think you kind of summed it up right there off the bat. Yeah.
Sheng, we're almost out of time. It's gone by very fast. And I don't know if I've laughed so hard with one of our guests so far. So kudos to you with some great zingers.
Well, you should thank the Sharks for that. So for the comedy.
See? He's a comedian. I love it. So quickly before we go, though, from a San Jose coverage perspective, you do a great job on the beat. If you haven't checked him out and you're interested in the Sharks at all, go to sanjosehockeynow.com. Sheng's stuff is great. How do you see the Dallas Stars as they exist currently going into the 25-26 season?
It feels like the Dallas Stars, and this is frequently wrong. I think a good example actually is the Sharks in 2016 when they made the final. People thought their window had passed, and obviously they surprised people in making the final. But obviously the Stars, though, you look at all the talent that they accumulated last year, they really put obviously everything in the last year. And I don't see how they got better this offseason, at least from my outside perspective. But though, they're still a really deep and talented team. So maybe they got better by subtraction, whether it's obviously the coach or other areas where maybe they got better, addition by subtraction kind of thing. And they're still a very talented team. They're obviously still a contender out there, but I don't see any clear upgrades, at least, from last season. I guess you can argue they'll have Mikko Rantanen the whole season. I guess that is an upgrade unto itself, which it is. But in terms of just their offseason additions, though, they haven't. Yeah, they've mostly subtracted, right? So,
and one of the big conversations we've had is their inability to fit Mikael Granlund under the salary cap, because he fit here perfectly. Right. Everybody seemed to like him. He was obviously enjoying being part of the Finnish Mafia here in Dallas. But there was just, Jim Nill said there's no way they could fit with his sort of maybe final big contract of his career into what their salary cap was. And he was absolutely right. Yeah,
and Granlund's a guy that I think is missed in San Jose too. And Granlund's a guy that I don't think they should have ever traded to the Stars, to be honest. I know that's counter to the rebuild idea, but I think that you got to start keeping veterans, right? And some good veterans are good for your kids, like they have Toffoli, and Granlund was kind of the same way. He was good for the kids. He was still a productive player. And so it doesn't surprise me that he did what he did in Dallas. Actually, it's kind of cool, actually, in some ways, because I think when he came to San Jose, he was a reclamation project. He was a cap dump from the Erik Karlsson trade. And he reminded the rest of the league how good a player he was, especially at Four Nations when he was one of the best players on Finland, if not the best player. And in the playoffs for the Stars, where he was one of the few stars that you would say did not shrink from the moment, right? And so, yeah, so I think that part's been kind of cool to watch. And yeah, it's unfortunate you guys couldn't keep him because he is an excellent all-around player and just a good, from what I understand at least, and you guys might know better too from your side, but good room guy, kind of guy that you want around your Finnish players and your young players in general.
Well, Sheng, I can't say thank you enough, and I'm not just saying this lip service. It was an absolute pleasure to have you on today. And even when I say you're making me laugh, you made us laugh again, thanking the Sharks. So thank you very much. It was a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thanks, Sheng.
Thanks, Sheng.
Thanks, guys.
There he is, Sheng Peng, covering the Sharks with San Jose Hockey Now. And, of course, thank you to Ted Ramey as well, the Sharks radio host and pregame, postgame analyst as well. We will be back tomorrow with our next show, and we are going to highlight on Tuesday the Broad Street Bullies, Philadelphia Flyers. We will have Jackie Spiegel from the Philadelphia Inquirer and Kevin Kurz from The Athletic. They both cover the Flyers. 2 o'clock Central Time tomorrow. For Elijah Smith, our producer, for both Ted and Sheng, our guests, and for Craig Ludwig and Sam Nessler, I'm Owen Newkirk. Hope you have a great Monday. See you tomorrow.
We all silly like the mayor.